Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast on Tuesday morning, March 28th. And holy smokes, is there a lot going on in the NBA. Every day I check the standings, particularly in the Western Conference. The East is set in terms of which 10 teams are going to be in. There's going to be a lot of jockeying for spots 7, 8, 9, maybe 6, maybe 5, maybe 2, 3, 4. We'll see. But the teams are set. The West is just a complete cluster, you know what, that changes every day. And I check the standings every day and I feel like, okay, I got a handle on it. Then a bunch of stuff happens and I don't have a handle on it anymore. We got to sort a lot out, starting in Dallas, of course, where the Mavericks, big road win last night against the Indiana Pacers, featuring 3 players that even casual fans have heard of. Nobody healed, no Miles Turner, no Tyrese Halliburton. Dallas blew them out to right the ship after a disaster. Doesn't even do it justice. Dropping 2 straight games in the thick of a playoffs race to the Charlotte Hornets without LaMelo Ball. And forget that, without Terry Rozier, without Kelly Oubre Jr., just an utter catastrophe that has dropped the Mavs to 37 and 39, after their inspiring win last night in Indiana, and 11th in the West. Tim MacMahon, I need help, man. How are you doing?
Howdy, partner. Doing all right. I checked basketballreference.com today, all-time Mavericks coaching records, and was a little bit surprised. Rick Carlisle is still the all-time winningest coach at 555. I thought that might be 556 after last night. I thought Rick might get credit for last night's victory for the Mavericks with that lineup that the Pacers put out there. What a tank-tastic job. I mean, look, they're competing though. The Blazers, the tank Blazers, are in full effect. So the Pacers got to work hard. And what a great time for the Mavericks to run into a team that is determined to lose, because they, as you said, absolutely needed a win any way they could get it. And look, they did what they're supposed to do. They came in and they blew out a team that had no interest in winning. But boy, it did not wash away the stink from that home and home debacle against the Hornets over the weekend. And Dennis Smith Jr. just, the dagger 3 in Dallas, the dagger alley-oop, letting them know about it. You gave up on me, baby. Man.
Yeah, and they're not alone in giving up on Dennis Smith Jr. Dennis Smith Jr. almost gave up on Dennis Smith Jr. There was a great story. I think we talked about it before the season, about how he was thinking about trying out for the NFL. And his story, I mean, nobody watches the Hornets, and I mean, like, nobody. But his story has been one of the best little under-the-radar stories of the season. He's he's got big limitations, but he's a real NBA backup point guard now. And that dunk to seal the second game, both games just blended in. Yes. Both games blended in because in 10 years, when I think about these 2 games, you know what I'll think of, Tim? I will think of the Mavericks being, as we all knew they would be, as you and I talked about the day after the Kyrie trade, so undersized and so limited defensively that for segments of both games, PJ Washington looked like Shaq. Like he would just get the ball in the paint and be like, oh, there's nobody. I'm lording over everyone. Yes. Like Gulliver. Is Gulliver the big one and the Lilliputians are small? It's been a long time since I read Gulliver's Travels. Sneakily.
Why don't you go? It's right there. Go Clifford the Big Red Dog. Steve Clifford. Come on. It all ties together.
Clifford the Big Red Dog. A, very cute. B, all the books suck. They all suck. Nothing ever happens in Clifford the Big Red Dog. But PJ Washington would get the ball in the paint and just be like, oh, there's nobody here. Let me go full on Shaq on this pathetic Mavs defense. But let's set that aside for a minute.
But you say that. The 2 things I will always remember about this little home and home sweep by the Hornets, I have 3. The Dennis thing I just mentioned. Jay Kidd describing their performance in the first half Friday night as dog, which was accurately transcribed by the Mavericks PR department, by the way.
Hey, look, they got a job to do. That's what the coach said.
And then the Mavericks responding to that call out by playing even worse to start Sunday, which, I said on the Hoop Collective this weekend tells me that Jason Kidd's voice was not being heard in the locker room. I did have somebody reach out to me and say, hey, J Kidd has not lost this locker room. I said, I didn't say he had, but you can't have that kind of call out and then an even lower energy start and tell me that the voice is getting through. So that was one thing. And then the other thing, and I think for most Mavs fans, probably the most lasting memory will be Luka's post-game press conference after Friday, because there wasn't one after Sunday, where, I mean, Luka, like, he's a very emotional guy. He's either high or low, like he wears them on his sleeve, but never have I seen him in a post-game press conference just look that beaten down. And, so I asked, is this as frustrated as you've been? And he said it was. And then, that's when he's talked about there was a lot of things going on, not just in basketball. Well, and again, I followed up on that. I said, well, what else is bothering you? Because when he said that, I made the same, my reaction was kind of the same as yours. And he made it clear he was referring to stuff in his private life. So that wasn't, because when he said that, I'm like, whoa. Is this behind the scenes? And he made it clear it's stuff in his private life. But still, he is just so frustrated, so just beaten down by the losing. And by the way, he doesn't get a pass on that stuff too, because he's been a big part of it.
His
right?
defense,
like Luka's lack of go ahead.
His defense right now is one of the flashbulb memories of last year's playoffs. And to his credit, he bounced back from it. Was game 2 of the Sun series when Phoenix I haven't seen a superstar humiliated like that on defense in a long time. And he bounced back and he dialed up his effort, and they won the series in resounding, humiliating fashion for Phoenix. His defense in the last 2 weeks has been that bad. Just absolutely zero effort on closeouts, getting blown by everybody, no effort in transition. The whole team's defense in transition is completely disjointed. Guys are running around pointing over here. You go there, you go. And then all of a sudden somebody on the other team just walks in for a dunk. Yeah, the shrug. Yeah.
But the so many Luka transition defense. I did have a scout tell me he's the worst transition defender in the history of basketball.
That seems a little much, scout guy. It seems a little much.
When he said that, I thought he had like analytic evidence. I'm like, statistically, and he goes, no, just watch them. I'm like, okay. So
that's old school. That's some old school scout talk. I like that. That's some old. That's like the scouts that are around the table in Moneyball, just throwing hyperbole at the wall.
But the fact that I thought that there was actual analytic evidence that backed it up tells you, because dude, even last night in Indiana, when they're rolling, there's a possession where he drives and puts up a shot. Hey, could there have been a whistle? Sure. There can be a whistle pretty much anytime he goes to the basket because he's creating contact. He didn't get a whistle. So his reaction was to throw his hands up in the air and walk toward the baseline. It's like, Luka, you're walking that way. 9 other guys are going this way. Oh, look, boom, boom, boom. Wow, what a coincidence. The Pacers get a layup on the other end. It obviously didn't cost him in Indiana, but dude, if there's going to be 2, 3, 4, 8, 10, 12 sometimes of those type of possessions per game, like you cannot just gift the other team 5-on-4 opportunities multiple times per game because you're upset with the officiating.
I guess you can do,
sometimes you're just pouting.
What I guess you can do is get your 16th technical foul and then have it rescinded so that you can play in the next game. Even though I never did, was there a reason why it was rescinded other than they just
wait. That's a $35,000 sign, but that's not a 16th technical foul. That little money sign there, but yeah, this is why it wasn't rescinded. This right here, money, baby, because it doesn't benefit the NBA to have Luka Doncic suspended when the Mavericks are fighting. well, I'm not going to get into too deep of conspiracy theories, but I think Luka versus LeBron would be a pretty highly rated play-in game. I don't know. What do you think?
It would be pretty good. All right. Well, let's look at the standings and sort of do the big picture before we go back to Dallas. A lot of things are happening in the West. I took special note and watched the game last night of Phoenix, Utah, and Utah losing to the Suns. By the way, Devin Booker, we might talk about all NBA later. I mean, he is making a late push for one of these last guard spots, despite I think last night was his 48th game played.
Yeah.
If he plays all the rest of the games, he's going to get to 55. And there are a bunch of, I mean, high wattage sells it short. There are a bunch of guards with all NBA pedigrees and greater than that who are going to finish in the 55 games played range. And I'm talking Curry, Harden, Booker, and others that I'm probably forgetting.
Damian Lillard.
Dame is going to finish at 58 games. But okay, I'm glad we arrived here. Every time I read coverage of the Blazers and what do they do now other than shut down for the second straight season all their relevant players in an effort to increase their lottery odds, I just hear like it's whether it's Chauncey or the players or the brass when they talk, just like, oh, we've had so many injuries. We haven't had our team. This guy was injured
to tank,
and that guy was injured, and Jeremy Grant was out for a bit, and Simons tweaked his ankle and missed 15 games, and Nurk this and that. You know who has injuries? Literally every team in the NBA. I'm sorry that you had some injuries too. The reality is you are 13th in the Western Conference. Your team just isn't good enough. And I mean, look, Damian Lillard has dug deeper than you can possibly dig to the center of the earth into the I don't define my career by winning a title, which I think is completely fine and an admirable mindset. Implied by that is, and he said it publicly, it would mean much more to me to win a title here in Portland than to go somewhere else and do it. He's also made comments about how he's not really down for a rebuild. That's not what he wants. I don't know what's going to happen in Portland. I know that a lot of teams in the league read those comments and their ears perk up and they want to see what happens in Portland this summer. But I just don't want to hear as we do the Blazers postmortem about, well, if not for the injuries, then this, because it's just not a valid thing.
Well, the other thing is we went into this season saying, hey, Portland's basically an NBA purgatory. Like, they're not good enough to be remotely close to a contender. They're not bad enough to end up with high lottery odds. We ended up maybe being wrong on that end. They're gonna they could.
They have the same record as the Magic right now in the race for whatever sad sack spot that is.
Yeah, like they could end up with the fifth spot. They're just, unless they get really lucky in the lottery, I don't see any kind of path for them to contend during Damian Lillard's career. And like, look, if the most important thing to him is to be a one franchise icon, completely respecable, like, nobody should criticize him for
one should define what other people's happiness is based on. People get to choose their satisfaction.
Yeah. If he wants to play his whole career in Portland, I completely respect that. If he wants to push for a trade and go chase a championship somewhere, I respect that too. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend like the Portland Trailblazers or the Portland Tank Blazers, as we speak, are going to have a chance to contend for a championship with Damian Lillard, entering his mid-30s.
Well, you mentioned the lottery, and why the lottery really matters for Portland is, obviously, if they get really lucky, then it changes your whole life as a franchise. If they just get kind of lucky, which means maybe they go to 4, maybe they stay at 5, maybe they end at 6, whatever, it's still a valuable thing to have. And I have said over and over again, if your stated goal, which it is, as the Portland Trail Blazers, is maximizing the remaining prime of 32, 33-year-old, whatever he is, Damian Lillard, coming off maybe the best season of his entire career, you are failing at it. You know how I know you're failing at it? You have the same record as the Orlando Magic. And it's not just because of injuries. And
also because your best path is to tank with weeks left in the season and like blatantly tank.
And the veteran talent around Damian Lillard, if they re-sign Jeremy Grant and keep Yusuf Nurkic, whose step back this year has been a massive story for them, is not good enough.
Yeah.
Your younger talent around Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons and Shaedon Sharpe, headliners, is intriguing, may not, likely will not be ready on the timeline of Damian Lillard. And I've said over and over again, if you are serious about executing that stated goal, you have to investigate what you can get on the trade market for all or some of your best rebuilding timetable assets, including Simons and including Sharpe. And they're going to be reluctant to do that. And you know what? I get it. This draft pick, though, gives them a third one. And it raises the potential of keeping one or two of those kinds of assets and still swinging something big to help them. But I don't want to talk about the Blazers anymore. Can we stop talking about the Blazers?
After I say the uncomfortable reality is probably the best thing for the franchise would be to move on from Damian Lillard. But easier said than done when you're talking about that kind of icon for the franchise.
See, I think that
maybe the best player in franchise history.
I don't necessarily agree with you because I get what you're saying. And in the cold, calculated reality of impartial analysis, that's true. In the real world, what that is pain. And it could be pain for a really long time in a market that has no free agency appeal and would be relying again on lottery luck that has been kind to them in the past. It hasn't always worked out in terms of the players they've gotten staying healthy and all that. But I just think that's, and this is a beloved franchise player. Anyway, enough. Here's the West, the Utah game. Utah's 35-40. They're not quite out of it because they're only a game behind the Mavs in the loss column, 2 in the win column, 2 games behind a whole morass of teams in the loss column. But I think Utah seems to have reached a point where they're okay if they continue falling a little bit backwards.
The Jazz have gracefully bowed out of playoff play-in competition.
By the standings, not quite yet, but I think they're okay with it.
Look at what they're putting out there for a second unit. They have gracefully bowed out.
Hey, I'm glad Chris Dunn is back in the NBA and playing pretty well because I like Chris Dunn. But why that matters is not just it eliminates another team and we're down to 11 for 10. They play the Lakers twice in the last 7 games of the season, including in the very last game of the season. If those end up being like walkovers for the Lakers, like Lauri Markkanen's ankle hurts and this and that, that's a big deal to a Lakers team that just got LeBron James back from injury. We'll talk about him. Some other things that are happening. The whole conference is now from 6 to 10 and 11, if you want to include the Mavs, is so tight that it's ridiculous. 6 is Minnesota at 39-37, starting to play well.
And I was going to say 4 straight wins.
I said last week with Van Gundy, now that Cat's back, and I understand Cat's going to have some, they're going to have to figure out the fit. But so far, it's been the 2 games he's played has been smooth. He's fit in offensively, defensively. They've still got to figure out where and when and how to use him best with Gobert, what position, what scheme, and all that. But he just raises their ceiling to the point it needs to be for them to be a threat. And I said to Van Gundy on the pod last week, I think both the Wolves and the Thunder, if they get in, have the ability to win a playoff series. And I think the Wolves specifically are a major, major threat, almost no matter who they draw in the first round. And they're playing well. The Pelicans, who have an absolutely hellacious schedule the rest of the way, have surged back into the race. They're in a 4-game winning streak. Their schedule the rest of the way is Denver, Clippers, Kings, Grizzlies, Knicks, Wolves. And then tonight, the game I left out, a massively important game against the Warriors, who are 39-37, which could determine the tiebreak between the Warriors and the Pelicans. The Pelicans have the season series right now 2-1. The Warriors winning tonight would tie it and put conference record in play, and they're about tied in that as well. That's a huge game. The Clippers, 2-1 without Paul George. They're only a game up. Their grip on the 5th seed is not so secure. They have a pretty hard schedule going forward. And Ty Lue announced last night, got totally no attention because it's the Clippers and Paul George is hurt. Marcus Morris is out as a starter. Nick Batum is in. He wouldn't even commit to using Marcus Morris as a backup. I think this is a good and overdue move for the Clippers. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Marcus Morris is not the player he used to be, and Batum is just kind of a connector, right? Especially if you're going to be playing, Russ a lot, and obviously then if he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. Batum is a floor spacer, a ball mover, just kind of a switchy, solid defender. So I think it's a move that, as you said, probably should have happened a little bit ago, and makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that Warriors game tonight is huge. And Batum's just been flat out better than Marcus Morris. He's a better defensive player. I had a 10 things item a few weeks ago about just Marcus Morris's slippage on defense, his inability to switch and keep anybody in front of him. He does not get any rebounds. And Batum's just better. He's a better shooter. He's a better player. He's a better defender. He's a better passer by a million miles. And the more you play Russ, who's been solid for the Clippers. So far, my stay 10,000 miles away from Russ take has been wrong. He's been pretty good for them. I don't trust it. I still would stay maybe 500 miles away. But if you're going to play him a lot, you need more shooters and ball movers around him, and that's Batum.
And now without Paul George, though, like Russ, they need Russ. Like they need his ability to create. They need his ability to put pressure on a defense and, to get downhill and create chaos. I think when, the concerns with Russ are more like, dude, if the ball's going to be in Kawhi and Paul George's hands all the time, like what's Russ going to do? Well, unfortunately for the Clippers, that's not a problem right now because Paul George isn't playing, and we don't know when or if he's going to be able to play during the playoffs. So I think if they didn't have Russ right now, we'd look at them and be like, man, how are these guys going to score?
Here's the Clippers' remaining schedule: at Memphis again, at New Orleans in a potentially huge game, home, quote unquote, against the Lakers is it going to be the biggest LA game ever? Is that possible? I mean, this whole LA streetlight spotlights thing has been a complete bust since there's been like they opened the season together one year and played each other, and that was a big spotlight game. But is this actually the most consequential Lakers Clippers game of all time? I'm sure I'm forgetting something.
For a while, I thought we might get streetlights versus spotlights in the second West playing game. So it's like, winners in the playoffs, loser goes home. I was ready for that.
If it's in the playing game, it's like broken headlight versus blinking streetlight or something.
Yeah, so I don't think that's possible. So this is about as good as we're going to get.
And then
Portland. I don't think it's probable.
And then the Clippers wrap with Portland and at Phoenix, and we'll see. It's always these little quirks. Like, does Phoenix need that game? Do they end up sitting everybody? That ends up being important. Right now they would, but we'll see.
The Clippers have been known too, depending on where they are. Like, let's be honest, some of the most blatant late season tankapaloozas have been Clippers trying to determine playoff seeding. You remember the great Daniel Oturo versus Point Poku Clippers Thunder game in the regular season finale when the Clippers were, I think, trying to dictate matchups so they didn't have to see the Lakers in the early rounds, but also were more than fine to see the Mavericks in the first round. And the Thunder were just trying to tank, but you can't tank and put Poku at point guard, baby. He's too good. He's too good.
So if I were the Clippers and I were ever contemplating shenanigans such as that, And believe me, the Clippers for weeks now have been looking at the standings and staring at that 4-5 matchup against Phoenix and potentially fully functional Durant, Paul, Booker, Ayton quartet, who's the fifth member of the quintet, is just a Monty Williams spinning a wheel. Ish Wainwright, come on in. Terrence Ross, can you make some shots? But still,
give me a Josh O shout out. Come on, baby.
Josh Okogie, one of the best offensive rebounding guards in the history of the NBA this season. Josh Okogie. They've been staring at that matchup and thinking, boy, that seems like something. It's not ideal. Not our first choice.
Will we rather see the Kings fresh off a 16-year playoff drought?
I thought this podcast would be a celebration of the Kings ending their playoff drought. And the Minnesota Timberwolves without Karl Towns last night said, no.
Gobert gave him that little finger wave. and a fadeaway mid-ranger.
He did not. I didn't see that game. Gobert made a fadeaway?
A little spin into about a 8-10 foot fadeaway. Got to balance. I don't know who it was on the bench, but somebody got up, and I think it was like his back wrap. It might have been Terrence Davis. Got up and like just threw his wrap just in disgust that the thing went down.
Okay, so if I'm the Clippers and I'm contemplating such shenanigans, I would take a step back and think, how have the basketball gods treated us in the entire history of our franchise? And do we want to tempt them again by manipulating the standings in a nefarious way? Because the basketball gods have not treated the Clippers very well. I would be trying to appease them at all costs. Let's talk about Dallas now that we've sort of done the playoff thing, and then we'll get to LeBron and all of that. Here's Dallas. 37 and 39, 11th. Got about a 40, 45, 50% chance, depending on what systems you look at, of making the play-in. Hooray. Their remaining schedule is not great. The best thing they have going for them is they finish with the Spurs, which is like an automatic win. I say that knowing they just lost 2 games in a row to the Hornets, but the last game of the season is a different animal.
Also, they beat the Spurs by 1 this year when I think Luka had 51.
At Philly, and you get the health issues potentially that we're going to talk about later. At Miami, they need every game, including a big Miami-Toronto game tonight for positioning. At Atlanta, they need every game. Home against the Kings, who, they're kind of locked into 3 now, but still they're trying to win for now. Home against the Bulls, they need every game for playoff positioning, try to get out of the 10 seed at least. And then the Spurs. They are 6th in offense for the season, a very ugly 23rd in defense that hasn't gotten any better. Interestingly, they are +4 per 100 possessions with Kyrie and Luka on the floor, plus a lot with Kyrie by himself, which means they're getting destroyed in the Luka only minutes since the trade. And
there have been a lot of no Luka, no Kyrie minutes as well. But when those two guys play together, they're only 4 and 8. They're +4, but they're as a duo with them both on the floor together. But they're 4 and 8 in those games.
4 and 8, some crunch time losses, including the hot potato game against Minnesota. The numbers suggest the record should be better than that, but it is not. Right. And of course, the Kyrie trade was a lot about Kyrie, but also a lot about what they gave up for Kyrie. And we talked ad nauseum about this. Their best wing defender, their 4th best player on last year's conference final team, and Spencer Dinwiddie, and maybe number 3 in Dorian Finney-Smith. Obviously, they had already lost their 2nd best player off that team for nothing after completely blowing the Jalen Brunson situation. I don't want to go back
and that 2029 unprotected pick. Like, it's only one pick, you could say, for a superstar. We understand why they were able to get a quote unquote discount deal there. But the fact that they gave up that pick, and with what's going on with this, top 10 protected pick with the Knicks, they are extremely restricted as far as what they can offer in trades moving forward.
Well, there was a lot of analysis yesterday about that top 10 protected pick with the Knicks before they gave themselves a little boost with this Pacers win.
Well, now they have the 11th best lottery odds instead of the 10th best.
Should they tank? Should they do this? And
Stop.
I don't think there is it's very hard to simultaneously argue they should tank and they should also be very concerned about Luka Doncic's happiness in Dallas, because those two things I think are antithetical. They are going to try to make the play-in and make the playoffs because that's what Luka Doncic wants to do. He's interested in winning. I don't want to go rehash all the draft misses other than the home run Luka trade, which the Atlanta gift wrapped for them, and Jaden Hardy, who we're going to talk about.
Well, and Jalen Brunson was a home
and Brunson,
run
and Finney Smith, undrafted free agency home run. Like, they've done some nice things on the fringes.
Yeah.
They've also missed a lot. All the free agency stuff, they came up empty. All the little trades that just didn't quite work out the way that they thought they would, even going back to like Seth Curry for Josh Richardson and on and on and on. It just, the trickle of asset drain, just drip, 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 drip. You almost don't notice it as it's happening. And then you get to a stage like this. And I said to Van Gundy last week, this was recorded before the Charlotte back-to-back. I said, I don't know if people have realized, like, outside of Dallas, that I think I said we're in DEFCON 2 right now, because the scenario they're staring at is if they miss the play-in or lose in the play-in and miss the playoffs, they have Kyrie Irving, who they just traded all that stuff for, who can walk in free agency. I don't need to tell you that Kyrie Irving is just by definition a flight risk in free agency. Then they'd have cap space if in that event. But who are they getting?
And also not max cap space.
But a lot. But the free agency class is not great. And then Luka would be looking around and being like, what in the world just happened to my team? And I don't think I made this comparison last week, but it would be very like LeBron in 2010, except he has 3 years left on his contract, just in terms of a singular superstar talent with a just woefully underqualified supporting cast around him because of that drip, 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 drip. And that's just what we're staring at. And the whole team, other than Hardy, is just a mess right now. Everybody looks uncertain. There's a your turn, my turn element to the Kyrie Luka partnership, with Kyrie spending a lot of time standing in the corner and just a lot of, even when they run the actions they should run, like last night against Indiana, they ran a couple actions where Luka or Kyrie, one or the other, would come up from the corner, take a screen from the other one, come and do a handoff from Powell. Like, that's the kind of movement they should have. Interactive screeners, the two of them together, and then fly in to a handoff. They would get the handoff and just sort of stop and dribble, and like all the advantage would shrink. They ran, I think Powell had the ball, maybe JaVale McGee, the best minutes of the year for JaVale McGee, had the ball up top. And Bullock and Hardaway, now starting again, ran a split action where they came together off the ball and screened for each other and burst out like the Warriors do, with Kyrie and Luka standing in the corners. And I'm like, it's a great idea. Can we have one of the other guys involved in it? They ran a Spain pick and roll with Luka, which is one of their go-to plays, David Carlisle. And the back screener was Reggie Bullock and not Kyrie, who was in the corner. I'm like, can we get that? Like, can we get Kyrie involved? And everyone else just looks hesitant. And
Josh Green looks like a rising star when Luka and Kyrie are out. And when they're on the floor, he looks like a wallflower.
And Kleba just he's battled this it's a hamstring tear, right? And he's come back from it
whatever
fast.
2.5, 3 months, whatever. He came back really fast, but like he hasn't been really himself on a consistent basis. Their starting center, they tried to replace Dwight Powell this summer. Dwight Powell is a really good backup center who has to start from the Dallas Mavericks. That's just what it is. JaVale McGee looked great against the Fort Wayne Fire Ants, whatever the hell that team was they played last night. But other than that,
I don't think that's it. Are they the Fire Ants now, and not the Mad Ants? I don't know.
Whatever the hell. I mean, some kind of ants.
Ants are very strong. Can't they carry like the multiples of their body weight than any other species in the world?
I'm going to take any 7-footer in the world against an ant, and I think we saw evidence of that last night with JaVale McGee's performance. Before that, JaVale McGee had played literally 3 minutes and 31 seconds since the All-Star break. Now, after that breakout JaVale McGee performance, they do have Joel Embiid on Wednesday night, assuming the density of games is acceptable for the 76ers.
Well, that's why you signed JaVale McGee for games like this, Tim MacMahon.
He's been DMP CD against Joker, against Embiid. Like, the man got a 3-year deal and a promise of a starting job. The 3-year deal is going to last. The promise of the starting job lasted 2 weeks.
It just isn't working right now. There's no juice. Everybody looks uncertain. When they made this trade, the very first thing I thought was, boy, that Kyrie Luka pick and roll, that's going to be LeBron Kyrie pick and roll 2.0. And I understand that Luka does not have a lot of reps as a screener in the NBA. That's not his thing. And
although, as he noted, he does have a good frame for screening.
Did he say that?
He did. He's somebody asked him about his screening. He said, well, I've got a wide body.
Yeah, that, he does. And it helps him in the post, which is one of the reasons this play should work and has worked, actually. And Kyrie, obviously, like, none of these guys are there's no Draymond Green, right? But here are the numbers so far. They've played, 4 and 8, 12 games together?
12 games.
They have run combined, this is according to Second Spectrum, 37 pick and rolls together. Either way, with both combinations. So that's 3 a game. That's just like so far short of adequate that I don't even know where to start. And what makes it worse, the Luka ball handler Kyrie screener is 24 of the 37.
Yeah.
The Mavs on those 24 plays have scored, this is not a typo, 1.625 points per possession directly out of those plays. That's like the Globetrotters can't score.
So it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
The reverse, Kyrie handling, Luka screening, 13 reps total, 1 a game. And a lot of those have been clearly like the opening 2 possessions of the third quarter of one of the Hornets games was that play, which means clearly the coaches were like, if you guys don't want to do it, we're scripting it, do it. Yeah. That's 1.5 points per possession, 1.25 if they shoot directly out of it. They need to be running it more. Last night they ran it a couple times in a row in the second half against Indiana, and they got Luka a post up against low guard. Guess what happened? Double team, swing 3. Next one, same thing. Luka back down, jumper over. It just should be their bread and butter, and it hasn't been. And it's nobody's fault. This is what happens when you overhaul your entire roster with 20 games left. It's like you just don't get instant chemistry, which is why Kyrie lectured you all the other day saying, "Oh, you and your pretty words, concern and poise." What were the other pretty words?
No, it was concern. It was concern and hope. Concern and hope were the pretty words. And I do enjoy Kyrie when he gets into these things. He has this like media voice that he does, where he impersonates like a talking head or a reporter asking questions. I can't really do an impersonation of Kyrie's impersonation, but it's a good one. Nice ironing board back there, looking good.
Yeah, I got the dry cleaning pile on there. It's just permanently out. But I had ambitions of like, I want my office to look nice. I'm gonna put it away in the closet after using it. That lasted a day. I think I put it back once.
Though, like the Mavericks plans to run a bunch of pick and roll with Kyrie and Luka lasted about a day.
And look, I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, like part of this trade, which obviously Luka was pounding the table, wanting them to get a co-star to go with him, right? And so part of this was about, okay, how do you play with a co-star? How do you play with another established all-NBA type of player? How do you play when everything doesn't just revolve around you? Well, Jalen Brunson, obviously, we're seeing how good Jalen Brunson is, and he does get better year after year after year. But Jalen Brunson last year was awfully damn good, but he was still Mavericks second round pick. Jalen Brunson, he ain't dude who's hit a Game 7 Finals winner, Kyrie Irving. A guy with Kyrie's pedigree. So we still haven't really seen Luka adapt to. I'm not even. To complimenting another star, not being a complimentary player. He obviously will never be that, but to coexisting where it's not just all, hey, Luka, we're going to put the ball in your hands, we're going to space the floor, everything's going to revolve around you.
And look, even if Kyrie is just standing around on some possessions, it's still Kyrie Irving standing around. It's still different to the defense than Reggie Bullock, all due respect, standing around, or Josh Green standing around. The threat is ever present, always lurking. One catch, one dribble, and you're toast. But it's not maximizing the two of them together, and it's certainly not going to help their defense that they're just so small.
Well, yeah, I was going to say we talk all about maximizing those two together offensively. They're scoring 118 points.
Yeah, they're fine.
Possessions with those two on the floor. They can't stop anybody.
They
can't rebound.
They're fine, except I do think there's a chemistry price to be paid for just the Luka show, and there's a fatigue price that Luka pays for the Luka show.
And fine and really good offensively is not good enough. This team has to be historically elite offensively. It has to be, because they're not going, they just don't have the personnel. They will be overachieving to be mediocre defensively. That's just the fact. And when they made this trade, Jay Kidd, kind of tongue-in-cheek, basically said, we'll score 130, 140 and see if teams can keep up. Well, brother, you better score 130 or 140, because teams can keep up with 120. Against that defense, teams will keep up with 120.
4-8 together. There's been some debate about whether this is like another referendum on Kyrie Irving as a player, as an ingredient. He's been good for the Mavs. Like this is less about him, much less, and more about what they had to give away to get him, and what giveaways preceded that giveaway to get him.
I was going to say not only what they had to give away, but just how flawed the roster was even before they gave up by far their best wing defender.
But
they've turned, going back to the Brunson debacle, they've turned the second, third, and fourth best players from a West Finals team into Kyrie as a pending free agent. And I
just got a shudder down my spine.
Yeah, and I have said it is completely unfair to watch Luka talk about how frustrated he is and say, "Oh, Kyrie's blowing up another franchise." Listen, Kyrie, the track record is what it is. He has been a professional in Dallas. He's been a good teammate. I have heard not one mutter about Kyrie as far as, any kind of BS, right? He's played well. He stunk against Charlotte. Both games. He stunk.
Both games. Couldn't make shots.
That's just a fact. And if he's not lighting it up, like, he's never been a guy who helps you win in a lot of other ways.
There you go. Because part of the track record of Kyrie Irving, we all know the noisy, absent parts of it. Part of the track record of Kyrie is, and I've said this before, whatever his numbers are, and his numbers are outrageous, and his talent is outrageous, he has long struck me, just personally, it's hard to prove this or whatever, that there is not a direct translation between those numbers and his impact on winning games. It is, the impact on winning games is X% less than 100 of what his numbers would suggest. Some people impact games at 125% of what their numbers suggest. Some people it's even. To me, he's always been, and I want to be careful. I don't want people to say that I'm calling him a losing player or an empty calories player. Absolutely not. The guy is a champion. He's a star. He is a massively helpful player. I have just always thought, because of his defensive limitations, his I would say on again, off again playmaking for others. He's a very good passer, but he doesn't leverage that skill very much. And just the difficulty of the shots he takes. We do this thing with Kyrie where he makes 2 crazy layups and the announcers are doing cartwheels about what a wizard he is. And he is, then he misses the next 4 and there's just no commentary about it because the expectation is you should miss shots like that. I just don't think he is impacting winning at the degree his numbers would suggest and amplifying other talent around him at the degree his numbers would suggest. And the only evidence I could put forth for that is dating now to the 2017-18 Boston Celtics. His teams have about the almost identical same record when he plays versus when he doesn't play. And a lot of that is all of those teams have incredible players on them, superstar players who are frankly better than he is, or at least as good as he is. And so they can withstand the absence of a player like Kyrie. But you would expect and hope that the presence of a player like Kyrie would lift that winning percentage somewhat. And it just hasn't for 6 years now.
Well, and what's crazy is with the Mavericks, actually, they have been, we're talking minuscule sample sizes, but they have been successful when it's Kyrie and no Luka. Like, you know, when they made the trade for Kyrie, Luka was coming back off that heel contusion. They're on a road trip. They start off, they beat the Clippers in LA. They beat the Kings in Sacramento. Then Luka comes back. They lose to Sacramento. They lose to Minnesota. But you know, they've won when it's Kyrie without Luka. They haven't won much with them together, and they haven't won when it's just been Luka and no Kyrie. But you know, again, this was a team that wasn't. It was mediocre. They made a desperate move to get Kyrie, but anybody who thought that giving up 2 starters from a mediocre team to get Kyrie was going to boost the Mavericks from mediocre to contender, like that was just wishful thinking.
You and I right off the bat said we do not buy the notion that this team is a contender. No on contendership. And Perk and I argued about that a little bit. And I said, frankly, with you, like, I would have just been long out of the business of having him on my team. I just wouldn't trade him, wouldn't trade for him, rather, wouldn't acquire him, and would not. And now they're going to have to make a decision about paying him. Look, the season's not over. Like, nobody wants to face Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving in a play-in game or a playoff series. But the DEFCON 1 scenario is much closer to becoming a thing than it was 96 hours ago after that Charlotte debacle, because I said LeBron in 2010, like, man, if this goes bad, Luka's got 3 years left on his contract. It's a long time, but
hold your butts.
The downside is unpleasant to think about.
It's not a long time. It is not a long time. Look at the recent history in the NBA. 3 years under contract for a guy who's miserable is terrifying. Are you kidding me?
If it weren't for Jaden Hardy, who I kind of think maybe they should just start Jaden Hardy. Like, that's how good he's been. He's shooting 42% on threes. They're running plays for him. You want to start a 6'4" rookie with Kyrie and Luka? Is it crazier than starting Tim Hardaway Jr.? Yeah. I mean, he's 6'4" with a 6'9" wingspan. He's shooting 42% from 3. He's just playing really well off of those guys. He's they're not going to start him. It's not going to be a thing that happens.
But there's reasonable hope that he can be a Jordan Clarkson, Jordan Poole kind of. And I know Clarkson's starting and Poole's started a lot. I'm talking like that kind of like 20 point per game 6 man I'm talking next season type of future. Basically, the guy's scoring at that level over the last few weeks. So yeah, that if you're looking for a silver lining, let's talk about their second round pick, who, if he didn't have a terrible year with the G League Ignite, probably would have been a top 5 pick. Jaden Hardy's the best thing that's come out of this Mavericks season. Now, when you have Luka Doncic at age 23, just turned 24, you don't want to say that your second round rookie is the best thing coming out of your season, and you traded for Kyrie Irving.
Like I said,
no,
they have time. They have time to get back into this.
They do.
They're in it now, and they have time to get further into it and kind of restore.
And I'll say this though, Zach, as much as we were like, hey, this doesn't make them contenders, I'll speak for myself. I damn sure didn't think we were going to be in late March talking about, boy, the Mavericks have some work to do just to make the play in. Like, I at least thought, okay, worst case scenario, there'll be like a 7 or 8 and be at the top of the play in, like just scrambling to be a 10 seed. This thing, and there's been health issues, whatever, but
both the stars and Kleba. Kyrie's been out here and there. Luka's, been nursing some stuff, and Kleba just isn't Kleba. And he was a massively important part of their playoff run last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those Charlotte losses were so shocking to watch, in part because there really wasn't any stretch of either game we were like, oh, here come the Mavericks being clearly better than this gutted Charlotte team. They were like, the Mavericks were full blast, like trying to stay in the game with the Hornets.
They led for 91 seconds of 96 minutes.
Ooh.
Over about a 36-hour span. They led for 91 seconds out of 96 minutes. They got the one stretch where they played their best was right after they got their asses booed at home when they were down 18 in the third quarter to the Hornets, who were missing 3 of their best players and on a back-to-back. Like, it's honestly one of the most inexcusable performances from a team that's supposed to be good that I've ever seen. And then J-Kid calls them dog shit, talking about how bad their energy was. And they come out and they get down, whatever it was in the first quarter, 18 or 20 in the first quarter, 36 hours later. It was unfreaking real. Funny little thing, I'll get my full Nick DePaula on. So Luka, he's got those Luka ones. And he's got these Luka ones that are like a tribute to J-Kid. They're based off the Zoom, whatever, 95, whatever. DePaula tweeted it. They're based off the Zoom Freak or whatever J-Kid wore in 1995. Luka wore those in the first quarter Sunday in Charlotte. Went over from the floor. Well, he changed his shoes after the second quarter, and Luka at least got going offensively after that. I'm not saying there's symbolism there. I'm just telling you about some shoes.
Ant had a shoe change the other day in the Wolves game too. That worked out. Wolves, man, I'm telling you, keep an eye on the Wolves. Unsung hero of the year for them, Taurean Prince and Naz Reid. And they're starting to play Naz Reid with both Cat and Gobert more.
And that's interesting.
That's been a disaster for the full season in limited minutes. But in the 2 games Cat has come back, those lineups have actually worked pretty well. All I'm saying is keep an eye on Minnesota. Let's bounce around a couple of headlines.
Real quick, because I can only the Hoop Collective, those guys aren't smart enough for me to go full nerd. But Naz Reid, one of the most fascinating free agents this summer.
Absolutely. Let's bounce around a couple of headlines. Do you care that Joel Embiid missed the MVP showdown part 2 in Denver last night? You do?
Yes.
Are you going to go full on perk? He's ducking the smoke. Or are you going to go there?
I think I don't think I'm capable of saying ducking the smoke and sounding like it's authentic. But come on, man. Like, dude, you're the one who's been campaigning for MVP, this, that, and the other. Density of games. Come on, man. Like, everyone's all excited to see this. And listen, we have to care. The E in ESPN stands for entertainment.
We held this podcast for that game.
Embiid versus Joker. That's one of the most entertaining matchups we could get. Like, come on, with the MVP and all the storyline. Absolutely, I care. Will I hold? First of all, I don't have an MVP vote, so I can't hold it against Embiid in my voting. But if I did, would I hold it against Embiid? No, but you know what? It was he forfeited a chance to make kind of a closing statement in that game.
Did he forfeit a chance?
If Joel Embiid says, you know what, I am playing. What is Daryl Morey going to like jump on his back and hold him back? Like, come on, man. If Joel Embiid said, you know what, y'all stick all this density of schedule stuff up your butts, I'm playing this game, then he was playing that game. So
I don't
yes,
know, man.
He forfeited it.
First of all, their schedule has been quote unquote dense. I like this. We just use these new words now, density of schedule.
Part of the fun is like seeing these terms. Like, what are we talking about?
He did sit out the second half of that Bulls game, which was confusing for a while because they didn't explain why. And everyone then assumed, well, this is a blowout. And then it was, well, he's also dealing with this calf thing. So that's a thing. And look, Joel Embiid, I love Perk. Perk and I are buddies. He knows more about basketball than I will ever know. I just know Joel Embiid. I don't remember him ever ducking anything. Like Joel Embiid goes at everybody all the time. He wants every trash talk, rivalry, center matchup there is. And in the playoffs, even when he hasn't brought it up to his efficiency standards, it's never a question of him looking awed by the moment or gun shy or whatever term you want to use. He goes down swinging all the time. I just find it hard to believe that Joel Embiid and he destroyed Jokic in Philadelphia. I just have a hard time believe Joel Embiid is sitting there like, you know what? Do I have the MVP cinched up? So this is just a lose-lose for me. I'm now afraid of Jokic in Denver because of the altitude and what. I just have a hard time believing that there's any part of his soul that is like, well, I don't want to play this guy tonight.
Well, all I know is I saw a missing person flyer for him in that Denver crowd. They were having fun with it in the Mile High City. I'll say this about Perk: the beauty of Perk. He's gonna say whatever's on his mind, and if you're either gonna agree with him or you are going to just want to yell and scream about how wrong he is, but he's gonna get a reaction from you.
But Harden also sat out, and Harden has now missed, I believe, 3 or 4 games in a row now with Achilles/foot soreness or whatever they're terming it. The Sixers are now 3rd in the East, 3 games behind Boston. For a hot second, it looked like they might overtake Boston and get the 2 seed and home court in that series. I've even had a couple people, these people don't know anything. They work for other teams. They're just, when the announcement came out last night that Embiid wasn't playing, there was a lot of hubbub around the NBA. And I had some guys on other teams text me, do you think they're trying to get to the 4 seed? Like, is this strategic on their part? And I'm thinking, what is the strategy behind that? Because you'd have on paper at least a harder first round series. I know Boston has had their number and they've matched up pretty well with Milwaukee. That feels like overthinking it to the point of being like wildly unlikely. And so I just dismissed it out of hand. They also saw
I would never think that Daryl Morey would overthink something. Are you kidding me?
They're also 2 games up on Cleveland still and have the tiebreak. So they're effectively 3 games up on Cleveland. Like, it's not easy for them to get to the 4 seed, even if they want to.
I'll tell you what, I think the Mavericks highly recommend that strategy. I think the Mavericks say, no, you should sit Embiid and Harden and PJ Tucker's old. He needs some rest. Sit them all on Wednesday.
Hey, man, it didn't work.
On ESPN.
It didn't work out for them when the Hornets didn't have anybody. And
that's the Hornets. They've got a long list of those type. Boy, we can go on through the list. They've lost to the Nuggets without Joker and Murray and Gordon. Mavericks fans, I don't need to repeat that.
In any case,
there's a long list.
I find that theory preposterous. But either way, no matter where Philly ends up now, it's almost a certainty that they will have to go road against Boston and Milwaukee to get out of the East. They're capable of it. They're absolutely in the inner circle of title contenders. If you told me right now they're the third best team in the NBA or the fourth best team or the second best team, even I wouldn't really quibble. Like I've been saying all year, they have everything they need to win the title. But that's a thing now that we have to look at, particularly with Harden. What did you think of LeBron's return the other day in a resounding loss to the Bulls? He had 19 points, came off the bench for the second time in his career. The Lakers remaining schedule, they are now embarking on a 5-game road trip starting tomorrow in Chicago. At Chicago, that's probably a 50-50 game. The Bulls are 10-6 in their last 16, I think.
Pat Bev will be there, baby. Pat Bev will be there.
Hitting LeBron with the too small. You got to respect Pat Bev in this sense. He will go so over the top. Like some people will talk a big game and then the game will happen and they'll like do the too small on Austin Reeves or he'll do the too small on Boban or something. Like,
dude, the second this man signed in Chicago, he looked at the schedule and said, I'm going to ruin the Lakers season on these 2 dates. Like he has been talking about this before his damn plane landed in Chicago. And then he wakes up that morning, posts a Charmin ad on his social media. By the way, has anybody photoshopped Adam Silver into that Charmin ad after? Well, anyways, posts a Charmin ad on social media and then goes out in too small as LeBron when he hits the dagger. Are you kidding me? This is peak Pat Bev.
Explain the Adam Silver Charmin joke because I don't get it. I'm probably I didn't even see I'm so out of social media that I didn't even see that Pat Bev did this. Charmin, I of course just think of Kobe. And the Kobe rant is he's walking off the floor in practice with Jeremy Lin in the background. He's Charmin.
Adam Silver, while I always do say I think he's got immense potential as a CEO, I would say he's got a reputation for being a little bit soft. And Luka's 16th technical foul being rescinded 2 days after, or a few days after the old non-T $35,000 money sign would tend to add to Mr. Silver's reputation as perhaps not being the harshest disciplinarian in the history of NBA commissioners. That's all.
He is for objectively not the harshest disciplinarian in the history of NBA commissioners. In fact, he is objectively not the harshest disciplinarian among the last 2 NBA commissioners.
He is not stern in any sense of the word.
Anyway, at Chicago, at Minnesota, that's probably a 45-55 proposition for the Lakers. At Houston, that better be a W. At Utah, that better be a W.
Hey, AD better play this time they go to Houston. I'll say that.
At Clippers, quote unquote, at Clippers on the ESPN family of networks versus the Suns versus Utah. Not an easy schedule for the Lakers. The first 5 on the road. How did you think LeBron looked in game 1?
You know what? Physically, I thought he looked really good. Obviously, there's probably a little bit of rust. The fact, his 5 turnovers, how much of that is getting back in a rhythm. But he looks athletic, explosive, like the physical freak that he is. That's good news. Him coming off the bench, I don't know how much of that was, just wanting to management. I don't know. I don't know what exactly that was all about. Perhaps it's because the Lakers are now Austin Reeves' team. But no, I thought LeBron looked LeBron-esque.
I would put the emphasis on the esque. He was rustier in my eyes than I expected. Physically and strength and spinning to the rim and all that. He had that in his game. And he's going to be LeBron. He had 19 points. He got to the line 8 times. I was struck by the relative for him lack of possessions where he just commandeered the game and was like, I'm going to run the offense. And I looked up the numbers afterwards. He ran 7 pick and rolls in the entire game. That's the fewest of any game this season. Now, part of that is coming off the bench separated him from AD somewhat, and they're pick and roll partners. And he had his 3rd fewest dribbles in any game this season, if you care about such things. And there was some possession at the end of the game where Chicago tried to put him in a pick and roll, and the Lakers pre-switched him out of it.
No, I thought he was bad defensively down the stretch for sure. Levine hit a clutch three. LeBron didn't even get a hand up on for I don't know why. And then, the Pat, Pat Bev can't be taking LeBron off the dribble and finishing in the lane and too small on him. Come on, man.
The pre-switching LeBron out of a pick and roll is not like an unprecedented thing for a superstar with a big offensive responsibility, but it's not something you would typically see from him late in a game. It's typically you'd see it from like a big behemoth center,
right,
that a team is trying to get.
Or a Luka.
or a Luka. They are 37 and 38. Pretty good chance of making the play-in. And
they don't have the tiebreaker on the Mavericks, whereas
they do not.
Do. Now, I think in a three-way, you correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that those three teams are tied. I think the Lakers end up third in that. I might be I shouldn't speak on that. I might be mistaken on that.
I plead the fifth on that. I don't know. 3-team tiebreakers are a bridge too far for me to consider until they take place. And when they take place, I will consider them. The Lakers do not have the tiebreaker over the Mavericks, the Jazz, which shouldn't be relevant. They do have it over the Thunder, and the Pelicans, who are right above them in the standings. Those things could matter a lot. I'm guessing their starting lineup will be Russell, Reeves, LeBron, Davis, Vanderbilt. That lineup has played 7 possessions together the entire season. Obviously, D'Lo just arrived and is now injured, and Vanderbilt just arrived.
Mm-hmm.
They got to figure out, there's some spacing hiccups with Vando and AD, but they have the ingredients to go quote unquote smaller with like LeBron as the only power forward on the floor and AD at center. They just kind of got to get their team together, and I think when they get their team together, they're a dangerous team. They need to clean up their transition defense, but I just need to see their team together before we start talking about how they're going to make noise in the playoffs, as I do think they could win a playoff series, but winning 1 and winning 3 are very different things. And this team is
hold on. You think they can beat the Nuggets in a playoff series?
It depends who they draw. I would pick the Nuggets pretty adamantly in that series.
So you think they can beat the Grizzlies in a playoff series?
I don't think these things are like as unlikely as they would be for a normal 1-8, 2-7 series, but I will pick both the other teams over the Lakers. Okay. But if they have LeBron and AD healthy and they have shooting around them, they're not going to be fun to deal with.
Grizzlies Lakers would be delightful.
You got to keep Shannon Sharp out of the arena. Okay, there are like maybe a number of people that you have to keep out of the arena for that.
I think there's the fact that folks are sipping on Powerade now courtside can probably help matters as well.
I don't, the Lakers just haven't shown you enough, they haven't had this team really, so it's hard to say that, but they just haven't shown you enough consistency, but I'm waiting to see it at least. But that's I just thought LeBron was a little rustier than I expect, but that's partly because of he's a god, so you just don't expect him to be rusty.
Also, 4 doctors recommended that he have his foot amputated, and then he found one who said he could play. What?
Come on.
What? That's not what happened. It was something. I don't know. It was something like that.
Amputated. And the LeBron of feet.
I might be exaggerating a little bit.
There's a lot of jokes I wanted to make about the LeBron of feet, but I don't think I
can. There was one I wanted to make, but we report on the NBA. We don't get into other sports.
Yeah, I think we're thinking along the same lines. I asked you to look at all NBA. Did you look at all NBA at all?
I looked, and again, I don't have a ballot, so you can whine and complain, but just understand that you can influence my thinking, but my thinking is completely irrelevant. This is tough. The guards are brutal. Honestly, I thought that the guards were tough. I didn't think that the rest was that difficult. I thought the guards were tough, extremely tough.
Oh, the guard, it's all difficult. And part of the reason it's difficult is because of games missed across the board.
Well, I thought centers were easy, and the difficult thing there is who's first, who's second. It's the same as your MVP vote, right?
Yeah.
So whatever. But Embiid, Jokic, Embiid, first, second, fine. And Sabonis is third team. And then I don't see anybody else who has an argument. I haven't
done the third team center thing yet. I have Sabonis penciled in, but I want to give Bam a look. I want to give Bam a look. Just a look.
Yeah, but Anthony Davis is the other, but hadn't played enough. Two hadn't been as good. Sabonis has been awesome.
Well, AD, at least we can agree he's a center now. I bet he's going to be listed at forward/center, knowing the league. You got to put him at center. If you're going to be realistic, he's played almost 100% of his minutes, if not actually 100% at center. Here's the thing with the guards. I mentioned all the guards with all NBA pedigrees that are going to play between, let's say, 50 and 57 games, which is right in that netherworld of like, unless I do think you get a sort of like, we all know this guy's amazing benefit if you're one of the top 8 players in the league. So that would apply to one or two of these guys. Lillard, 58 games, he's done. His team stinks. Not with him on the floor. Positive scoring margin with him on the floor.
Right.
Hard to leave him off all 3 NBA teams, but it's in play. Despite averaging 32 points a game.
I was going to say, my God, that's hard.
Morant, who brought some drama onto his team this year. And if we're going to criticize other guards like Kyrie Irving for bringing drama onto their team in many different ways, different ways than John Morant did, I think the same has to apply to him. He's going to finish in that range. Harden,
I'll say this. I think his suspension should be held against him more than an injury absence of equal time.
I think that's
the
fair.
suspension was completely his fault. So that is, to me, should be held against him more than a guy who missed 9 games because he sprained his ankle.
On the flip side, the team has rallied around him, won without him, and is now blowing the doors off people with him again. Absent that suspension,
awfully good.
Absent that suspension, he's clearly an all-NBA player.
I agree.
James Harden's at 53 games, leads the league in assists. He's part of the most unstoppable 2-man game in the entire league. I'm going through my missed games list. Steph Curry, I think, is at 50 games right now. And he's Steph Curry.
Yeah.
50, 42, 59 on twos. 50% overall, 42 on threes, 59 on twos, 29, 6 and 6. And I do think there's he's Steph Curry bonus. Going to keep that guy off the all-NBA team? So that's Morant, Curry, Harden, and Devin Booker. I mean, Devin Booker, 28, 5 and 5 on 50% overall, 37% from 3, 56% from the floor. They're +4 when he played per 100 possessions when he plays without Chris Paul. The roster has been a mess. He's only at 48 games. Again, he'll get to 55, I think, which is right there. Yeah. I don't know what to do with any of those guys. And then below them on the sort of quality of play, like these guys are not as good, but are going to end up playing 10 to 12 to 15 more games. Just a bunch of names: Jalen Brunson, Drew Holiday, De'Aaron Fox.
No, De'Aaron Fox has to. I'm sorry, De'Aaron Fox has to.
All right, so
I've got 4 guards who are locks.
Let's hear them.
Let's hear them. So listen,
4 locks, because I only have 3, so I'm interested in your 4.
Okay. Luka, I still have as a lock, despite as critical as I've been of him, and we talked about that earlier. Like, come on. I think he's still going to be on a lot of MVP ballots. I don't think he's an MVP candidate, but I think he's going to be 4th or 5th on a lot of ballots. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's absolutely an all-NBA player.
Let me say this about SGA. I was with the Thunder, hanging out with some Thunder people last week in LA, and they were asking, is he going to make an all-NBA team? So I think he might make first team all-NBA.
I've got him first team.
And then I did a lot of research over the weekend. I think he's got a pretty ironclad case to be first team all-NBA. Yeah. I'm not committing to it, but it's pretty damn close.
So I've got Luka and Shai as first team. Donovan Mitchell and De'Aaron Fox I've got as my second team. I think I think those 4 guys have to be all-NBA.
So Mitchell is my third lock because I think he's the best combination of durability and production that is left on the board. So I think he's got to be on second team All NBA by definition. After that, my ballot at almost every position other than center is a complete mess. I don't know what to do with the forwards. I don't know what position to list Paul George at, or even if he should be on an All NBA team. I mean, the forwards, Kawhi, he's going to get to 50.
Hold on. I want to know which guards you've left out.
I haven't left anybody out. I haven't committed. I have 3 locks, and then I have this list of all the guys we've named basically for 3 spots, and Fox is among those guys.
So real quick though, I
think
mentioned,
you're cool. You're putting Fox over Steph Curry and James Harden and
of durability,
Ja Morant and all these other guys.
Well, and here's my thing. Back to the Ja suspension thing. Hey, De'Aaron Fox is hitting game winners when you were suspended.
The clutch shooting does give you a lot of extra points.
Like De'Aaron Fox is showing up. The Kings have been the most pleasant surprise in the league this season. Like the guy's putting up numbers. He's been by far the Cojones Factor Player of the Year, aka the Jerry West Award.
25, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, 52% shooting, 34% on 3 you don't love, but fine. 58% on 2s, plus the clutch shooting, he's lapping the field. And they're almost up to even now when he plays without Sabonis, which were the minutes that were, if there were a little weak spot in his case, that was it for a while, and it's not quite as much anymore.
So
Anthony Edwards, we didn't even mention Anthony Edwards. All he does is play every game, basically.
Yeah. So here's where I struggle.
DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine. I mean, it's just like Trae Young. Yeah. Trae Young, people are going to laugh at the mention, and I don't think I'm going to put him on. You have to give a look to someone who's averaging 27 and 10, and their offense falls off a cliff when he sits. You have to at least give him a look.
You do.
A look. You have to glance his way and give him a little look.
So how much do you hold against Damian Lillard, who's averaging freaking 32 points per game, that the reason his games played is going to be so limited is because they're tanking down the stretch of the season?
It's hard to know. And I don't know if I said the words Jaylen Brown. If I didn't, I'm sorry. He's going to be listed as guard and forward both.
We are putting him as a forward because he needs to be all NBA. And
why does he need to be all NBA? Convince me that he quote unquote needs to be all NBA.
Because he's had a hell of a season for the team that's going to probably end up with the second best record in the league. Because I don't have his numbers in front of me, but he's
27 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 49% shooting, 34% on 3s, 58% on 2s.
And is a hell of a defender. He's a dominant two-way player for a team that has the second best record in the league. And because they're damn sure not 6 forwards in the NBA that have had better seasons than him. Like, we can throw him into the argument for third team guard. But I've got him as a second team forward. So, but
you got him as a second team forward.
Yes.
Who are your second team forwards?
Him and Jimmy.
Yeah. So I think Jimmy Butler is second team forward, assuming he's eligible at forward and guard, and he should be.
Yeah. Bond tends to talk me into that one, which I always hate to
his numbers are outrageous.
Well, and the analytics, like if you get geeky and you look like Windshare and crap like that, he's what?
I just like the crap like that. Yeah.
But it's true. It's true. Like his, like impact analytic numbers are phenomenal, like top 5 in the league type of territory.
You ask around. So I just read Jaylen Brown's numbers, 27, 7 and 3. Jimmy is 22, 5 and 6 or 22, 5 and 5, something like that. But advanced numbers, they're just not even close.
Yeah.
Jimmy just destroys Jaylen Brown. And you ask around, okay, what are those things capturing? You ask around to people who know what's under the hood. Like, I don't understand how with those raw stats, how one guy can look like a top 5 player and another guy can look like the 45th best player in the NBA based on the advanced stats. You ask around, you say, okay, so here they're capturing Jimmy's just a way better defender, particularly off the ball. The playmaking limitations in Jalen's game, his assist to turnovers kind of ratio is kind of even. I guess in rebounding, free throws, I just don't see enough there, even when it's explained to me to understand why advanced stats paid Jaylen Brown one way and Jimmy Butler is so extreme the other way. But I also just think Jimmy Butler is I think he is better than Jaylen Brown, and he's a winner, and I would put him second team All NBA too.
I will say, as far as being a winner, Jaylen Brown was the second best player on the team to win 2 Game 7 of these finals. Was that his rookie or his second year? Whatever it was, went to the finals last year. Jaylen Brown's also a winner.
Yeah, and you look at the forward field, and it's like Kawhi's going to get to 50, LeBron's going to get to 50, Durant's going to be stuck at wherever he is, 42. Maybe he'll get to 45. Obviously, like I don't know what to do with those guys. Kawhi's been a top 6 or 7 player in the league for the last 35 games, and LeBron is LeBron. He's averaging 30 a game.
I know. First team's easy. Giannis, Tatum. Second team, Brown, Butler. I honestly, I didn't even put Kawhi on the list. I guess I should have checked his games played. Guard for me is a lot more difficult. My third team forwards, I had Julius Randle, who, say what you want, the guy's put up numbers and he plays every night. And then I had Markkanen, who's averaging, he's basically like a 50-40, high 80s guy who's averaging in the mid-20s.
This is kind of the decision you have to make is with all these, it's hard to have one of LeBron and Kawhi and not have both. And if you have both, I mean, logically, it's kind of hard just based on, if you're going to do it based on games played, if you're going to reward one and not the other, it's a hard, there are ways to do it. It's just logically a little difficult. If you exclude both, it's just, you submit an all NBA ballot without the name LeBron James on it, which I don't think I've ever done, no matter how many games he's missed. Maybe the first year in LA. I can't remember. And Lauri Markkanen and Julius Randle, I think you have the right names. If you're going to go that route, I think those are the names. Paul George has an argument, I think, to some degree, but it just feels a little funny, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I would lose more sleep over right now Dame, Steph, Ja, like
it's brutal. There's so many guards. Like the Bulls guys, they don't even get serious consideration. You look at their numbers, like, my God, Zach LaVine is like 50, 40, 90 for 3 months.
I've got, I think, 9 guards on like also considered. None of them are Bulls.
Darius Garland barely gets a sniff. He's been like,
none of them are
outstanding.
Not him either. Yeah.
Outstanding. No. Drew Holiday, his numbers are never going to pop off. 19, 7,
He's
and 5.
on the list. Yeah.
He's an amazing two-way player, shooting the hell out of it this year.
Yeah, probably, or at least arguably, the best defensive guard in the game, which matters. With all due respect to reigning defense player of the year, Marcus Smart.
This is one of the harder all NBA years I can remember, just because the games missed make it really weird. And there's just a lot of guys, man. The guards is like,
I will say this,
who else is on your also considered guards?
Okay, so right now I had Dame and Steph as a third team guys, and
penciled
into my mythical ballot. So about as soft a third team selection as you could possibly have. In order, other guards: Ja, Harden, Booker, Halliburton, Brunson, Trey, Drew, and I had Kyrie because I kind of have to throw him in there since I cover the Mavericks on a regular basis and I don't want to hear anybody's crap.
It's a good list. I have Kyrie on my list too, like on my also considered list, which is
Kyrie
this long.
But Kyrie, again, it's like why you missed games matters, right? And he missed games because he got himself suspended. I hold suspensions against guys much more than I hold injuries against guys. And again, with Dame, the question is, well, why wouldn't you hold tanking against a guy? That means his team wasn't, he didn't make enough impact to have his team even be relevant down the stretch of the season. And like tanking's a voluntary thing. So that's where I'm struggling with Dame, because the guy was awesome. Like the dude,
and then you run into these things like how different is 58 games than 54? Like, are we really, is the 4 games going to be your dividing line? But you have to, at the end of the day, these are just,
you have to break ties somehow.
You have to break ties. And also, like, it's just like, sometimes who do you think is better, this guy or that guy? Like, it's just, but like Dame, to keep Dame off at 32 a game with that team having a even slightly positive scoring margin when he's on the floor, and the career high in free throws, near his career high in assists, best off the dribble season of his career. Woo, that's a tough one to swallow.
32 is just, that's tough, man. I can't. 32.
Luckily for Dame, he's already locked in the Supermax, so there's no financial implications, thank God. And by the way, we talked about Luka and DEFCON 1. He's going to be eligible for every Supermax possible. The Mavericks at least have that quiver, arrow in the quiver. I almost said quiver in the arrow in the quiver down the line for when it's necessary. He'll be eligible for the 35% max, super max, super duper max, whatever max, every max. Max Weinberg max, whatever max.
Probably will be the first guy to make $1 billion in NBA salary.
Oh my God.
Hey, look, it's true.
My dad always taught me growing up, when the players' salaries started spiking, he said, Lil Zach, who do you think should get the money? The guys you like to watch play basketball, or the anonymous rich guys you don't even know who they are?
And here's my deal. Like, do you go to movies and whine about what those guys are making? Like, it's an entertainment business. The revenue's there. Like, whatever. I don't care what the players get paid. I damn sure don't care what the owners' revenues are.
Little Zach sitting at Shea Stadium watching Mookie Wilson up at the plate. Good old Shea Stadium. All right, Tim MacMahon, Hoop Collective, 3 times a week, but you're only on twice usually. I say only. It's a lot. It's a big burden.
It's still the Hoop Collective with Brian Windhorst, so they just let me pop on pretty often.
Writing frequently on all of your pet teams, host of the YouTube sensation Howdy Partners, which I've learned today has a special guest. Do you want to see who it's going to be?
Look at this ridiculousness. I'm having the sheriff on. The sheriff. They sent me this like life-size thing of his freaking comic book.
Well, can you just tell people who the sheriff is? Because I'm not sure a national NBA audience is 100% sure who that is.
They will know. It's Jazz rookie big man Walker Kessler, the sheriff.
Are we trying to make that happen? The sheriff? Are they trying to make that happen?
They are. I mean, they've sitting there. You got a comic book in the mail, brother. I got I think Derek Garduno, the Jazz ace PR guy, I think he tried to have like a billboard installed in my backyard, but city zoning issues came into play. So he just sent me this this massive thing here.
I don't know what I think about the sheriff. I have to have a think on that one. All right, Tim MacMahon, thank you, sir, for everything. It's great to see you. I'll see you down the line.
I appreciate you, brother. And adios, amigos.